Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Washington Outsider. With you today is your host, Irina Sukerman. I'm the editor in chief, and we are having a very exciting panel to discuss the Sharaka NGO, which focuses on strengthening the Abraham Accords. With us today is Dr. Majid Al-Sara, the co-founder of the organization, as well as Dr. Frank Musmar and Dr. Najat Al-Said, who are the heads of the Sharaka Scholars Forum, and we'll hear more about it today. Dr. Majid, I'd like to start with you. If you could tell the audience a little bit about what Sharaka is, how you decided to create it, what it's doing now, just a little bit for as an introduction.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's just a great pleasure to be here with my colleagues here, Dr. Najat and Dr. Frank. So, Arena, I would like to just highlight maybe briefly how Sharaka started. There was a delegation, a very high-profile delegation coming to the UAE from Israel for the first time. As you all know, all Israelis before the Abraham Accords could come to the UAE with a different nationality. If they hold any other nationality, they would be able to enter the UAE. So this delegation was really the first. There were so many challenges. They had to fly from Israel to Eastern Europe, as I recall, and then from there they had to wait and take another flight and come to Dubai, which was almost about like 16 hours or so. Once they came, we had great meetings. It felt like we know each other. We decided to meet, to hug. The first time you would meet someone, you would just shake hands maybe, or just say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" It seems like to be official. But with this delegation, which was coming from Israel, and by the way, not all of them were Jews. We're talking about Jews, we're talking about Arab Muslims, and we're talking about Christians. So it holds literally all the Abraham religions together. And also amongst the Jews, there were like Jews from Yemen, from Morocco, and then Ashkenazi Jews, which was, again, it's a great diversity. So we directly hugged and we laughed and we were so happy about it. And we started, we decided to have these brainstorming sessions. And once we did, actually, we were like, guys, I mean, we don't want it to be like a honeymoon, between the UAE and Israel, where you actually just be happy for a month, a year maybe, and then things will be very cold. Especially that we have the experience where Israel do have relations between, between Israel and Jordan and Egypt. But then, governments are doing fine. They're doing great. Not the people, though. So we don't want it to be exactly the same that what happened there called peace. We want it to be a warm peace, and we want it to be sustainable. So after these brainstorms, we decided to come up with a project, to connect people, to have people understand each other, to learn about each other, which was formed in the name of Sharaka. And by the way, it was chosen by Israelis, not Arabs. And because Sharaka means partnership, and it's an Arabic word. And everybody asks me, they're like, how did you come up with this name? I was like, it's not me. It came from Israelis. They were like, you know what? We want to choose this name. Which is, again, it's a beautiful word, reflecting the actual objective of this organization, which is connecting people to people. So again, I would say Sharaka was a fruit of the Abraham Accords that happened probably a couple of months after the announcement of the Abraham Accords, which was in August, I believe, when President Trump back then announced it, and then His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed announced it as well on social media. And then they had the inauguration, I think, ceremony in DC, which was in September 15. So we're talking about a couple of months after the announcement, which is, again, I believe it's a very short time. And once it was founded, we decided to go to Israel for the first time. And that was like the first operational target for Sharaka, just to have people from the UAE, from Bahrain, and also a person from India, a person from Egypt, they all believe in the Abraham Accords, and we went for the first time to Israel to discover how Israel is. And actually, I mean, later on we will talk about it for sure, but it was really very mind-changing because, again, with the media, misleading media, I would say, manipulation that happened, and maybe my colleague here, Dr. Najat, will definitely enhance on that. Uh, we did not see what Israel is. All what we see in the news is a conflict, is soldiers maybe capturing people, and the media would say these are innocents. On the other hand, I mean, when we went to Israel, we met people, we met scholars, we met people from the government officials, and it's totally different. It's not what you saw in the media, and now it has been 1 year. So this is, I mean, we're living the next level of the Abraham Accords. So that's briefly how Sharaka was founded, and it's still there, and it will always be there for sure.
That is great. I like the origin story, but I wanted to get a little bit more. How what drew you to that sort of activity to begin with? How did you end up working with the Israelis? As you yourself pointed out, there's a lot of work in terms of building people-to-people relations. This has not always been a
Yes.
comfortable topic, even in the UAE, which is very known for its openness in the region, but still, it's the Gulf. There's been the media issue, the educational issue, which is now thankfully changing. What drew you to that sort of activity in a controversial field, which was quite controversial before it became more of a necessity?
Well, thank you so much. I think it's a very, if not the most significant question, um, because as I mentioned, maybe the misconceptions that people have, especially in the Arab world. Now, you do have misconceptions, whether in America or in Europe, but in the Arab world, it's really, I believe, it's worse because people, whenever you do something, they would give you some verses from the Quran, which is misinterpreted. They just interpret the verses from their point of view. Whenever you speak with them, they have these misconceptions due to, I don't know, media, probably historical books, historical stories like the Shakespeare novel, I believe, The Merchant of Venice. Because this is what we have received. Everybody would say, "Oh, but Jews are this, Jews are that, whatever." And unfortunately, what we have noticed now, I don't have a study, I don't have a number. Like there was not a research conducted, at least as far as I know. But I'm pretty sure maybe some people did a research because the percentage of people who have this misconception is really very high. And whenever they come to you, they were like, "Oh my God, how could you, uh, by the way," and I'm talking generally, not just one nationality. So many Arabs, they were like, "How could you sit with the Jews? How could you go out with the Jews? It's really ridiculous." And I'm like, my first question is, have you ever had a dialogue with a Jewish person? Have you ever had any, but not just Jewish or Israeli? So again, it shows you that there is a huge gap, in terms of the people. Now, governments know they're well educated. They have the day to day. They fulfill the policies of the leaderships and the governments themselves. They know what they're doing, and they have to do it. They normalize. They try to enhance and connect people. But the problem is, um, you don't have the actual people connection, and people are so hesitant, and unfortunately they still follow their narratives. And I remember, by the way, having a discussion with so many people, watching the movies that came out from probably Egypt, because Egypt is a leading country in terms of movies and cinema. And I think I had also this discussion with Dr. Najat once, since he's really an expert in media. They planned these ideas, and ideologies that, oh, Israel is the enemy, Jews are the enemies, and unfortunately, people by default, they're not scholars, they're not researchers. They would just follow. They will have this information planted, and they will build on it, in terms of relations. They will like, oh my God, you're Jewish, I'm not going to shake hands with you. You're Israeli. They will leave or so on. which is so rude, which is not going to take us anywhere. We're talking about future generations. We're talking about kids coming in the future, and we don't want them to be copies of what we see. So again, Sharaka comes in and builds all these policies which connects people together, and not just connect them. We need to learn from each other. If you take, I mean, Israel and the UAE, both of them are leading countries in different aspects, different fields. UAE is doing a great job in terms of like having an economic hub and so on. Israel as well, you know, it's a hub for so many startups, entrepreneurs, innovation. So again, we need to learn from them, and they need to learn from us. If you come to Dubai, and I had so many Israelis coming to Dubai, seeing this urban city, and they were like, "Wow, we did not expect Dubai to be so modernized. You know, lots of technology. Life is easy in Dubai." They get really surprised, and again, they want to learn how this was done from desert to this. And again, in Sharaka, we build. Sorry, we create delegations. So we take people from the UAE to Israel, from Israel to the UAE, even, by the way, even Sudan, Morocco, Egypt, and Jordan. We had all these people coming to Israel, and coming to the UAE as well. They need to learn. They need to see how this relation is built. And the key, of course, is people to people. We all know that. But again, we need to change concepts. We need to encourage others. I mean, guys, we understand you had really very bad ideas. Maybe you had a very toxic teacher that taught you, okay, this land is called Palestine, it's not Israel. And by the way, I did not learn this, and believe it or not, I didn't go to a government school. I went to a private school, and then I continued my studies. Most of my studies were done in the UK, LSE. But again, I did not have any information because I did law and economics. I did not study history. I didn't have any, how can I say it, like deep information about that land. And then when I went there and I saw personally, I saw the Museum of Israel, the tour guide was an Arabic guy. And he said, no, Palestine descended from the Romans. It's called Palista, people of the sea. And actually, Israel means Jacob. You know, it's the name of the prophet that Muslims believe in. And again, uh, these transformations would be in terms of delegations, in terms of having people, you know, go into the US. And I have been to the US. Dr. Najat have been there on Sharaka delegations. We spoke before congressmen and congresswomen. We saw people and communities, you know, Jewish communities, even Muslim communities, and they were really inspired, you know, because I'm standing, an Israeli guy is next to me, an Arab Israeli is next to me, you know, and we talk, we hold hands, we support each other, and we talk in the same language. We're on the same line. So people need to learn. They want to see this model. And again, this model, it has to be generalized. And how we did it in Sharaka now, if you can see, we have a youth aspect, which one of our colleagues, actually, she's handling this youth connections and building ties. Recently, we came up with the Scholars Forum, which my colleagues here, Dr. Frank and Dr. Najat, are heading. So again, you tackle all the aspects, not just youth, not just entrepreneurs and businessmen, but we tackle all the segmentations of the people, which is really very important. And again, these segmentations will give feedback to each other and support each other and connect and complete to each other. So again, this is the main idea of Sharaka, generalizing the peace agreement and making it so easy for people to understand from a scholar's point of view, and again, from a regular person point of view, from a youth point of view. And again, we have received so many messages. People were like, thank you guys. You have changed a lot of our ideas, you know, and people actually, lots of people I know, and I'm not just talking about Emiratis. Emiratis are fine, but I want to tackle the Arab aspect, because in the Arab countries, each country is different than the other. And they were like, you know, thank you. I dream of a day to go to Israel. Whether they come, now, mainly they come from, you know, the Abraham Accords countries, but even other countries. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about even Algeria, Iraq. And we have seen the deputies a couple of weeks or maybe 3 weeks ago when they actually uh, they had this meeting and they actually want the peace with Israel, uh, which is so beautiful, you know, seeing all the people social media based, because whatever we did, we posted on social media. Our visit was live streaming from Israel, show in Arabic, showing the Arab people how beautiful Israel is, and how we felt so welcomed. And again, also Israelis when they came here, and I believe in the social media, we've seen lots and lots of pictures, videos, so many gestures. So again, Sharaka, I think, is really doing a great job in terms of people. And if we talk, because in the government we have only one segment, you know, government, that's it. And people sometimes nowadays in different countries, when government officials speak, they will go like, you know what, okay, we understand, all governments officials do. But when people to people are connected, that's the key to achieve the main goals, which is like building bridges, having a very peaceful Middle East. I think the Middle East have, you know, the Middle East has suffered enough, more than enough. Uh, we see control from different countries planting these ideologies, like the Iranian regime, like trying to expand their dominance in this region, and destroying other countries. And we don't want this to happen. We want people to be more, more aware, and people actually are. That's what we believe in. Whenever you have people for a dialogue, for a conversation, I think that's the key. Uh, and we have seen until today, I can assure you, like more than 85 agreements have been conducted between UAE and Israel in terms of education, food security, sustainability. And this is the part where we tackle actually, because we're talking about the future. And we don't want those kids that we saw in Israel and our kids here in the UAE to suffer or to hate each other, or to, because, you know, you shape the kids the way you want. And kids nowadays, you know, when they grow up with this peace treaty, and I'm pretty sure I can assure you in the future, this piece would be taught in history books. It would be taught in, political science colleges, on how the Abraham Accords were formed and where it's going and what are the fruits of these Abraham Accords.
I couldn't agree more. I think creating this foundation for bringing people together, for opening hearts and minds, and for creating joint activities that cement this beyond speeches and beyond aspirational ideals and wishful thinking. It's the key to enduring it past political upheavals and problems of that sort, and changing administrations and changing external circumstances. But I will come back to you to speak more about these challenges and overcoming these challenges. And but for now, I'd like to turn to Dr. I'll say it in Dr. Musmar, and I'll kind of ask them some of the questions for them, and then kind of come back to more of a roundtable discussion. Uh, Dr. Najat, I wanted to follow up on the issue, on the media issue, but first I want you to tell me a little bit more how first you got involved in all of this, and first of all, what made you, someone who is Saudi with a little bit of an American background as well, be interested in Israel specifically out of all the issues, especially given how controversial that's been in the past, and how did you decide to be involved in this particular group, and also to comment on the challenges of dealing with this media environment that seems to be that's resistant to these changes. It's embedded. Media institutions, changing institutions is not easy. I would love to hear your perspective.
Thank you, Arena, so much for inviting me. And I'm so glad that I am with brilliant scholars here, and we share most of those ideas. And regarding your specific question, what made me go for that? In fact, the peace whole process that is going right now, it is something that I have thought of a long time ago. Before this actual Abraham Accord that happened in 2020. The main reason that made me think of that was driven because of my writings and analysis. My academic background is in political and societal development communication. So my main aim out of all my studies and writing is how to overcome the obstacles of development through using the media. So my main target is societal development in the region. So throughout my analysis and writing, definitely as we see in the region, politics and instability are the main obstacle for societal development. And the main reason for this instability and political conflict is driven from radical and extremist ideologies that are playing a big role in this instability. So, and these ideologies, when you analyze them, they're driven of two polarized identities, which are mainly political Islamism and Arab nationalism. They are interpreted in a way to, instead of taking the region forward, it takes it backward, because it is interpreted in a very extremist way, in more very gigantic way and biased way. And those who are like running those, they have their own political reasons. So they are interpreting Islam politically to fulfill their own political needs. And also they're using the passion and emotion of nationalism and this nostalgic ideas in order also to fulfill their political needs. So what is actually inflaming all of these identities is basically the Palestinian cause. And from that point, when I was like analyzing what is the cause, so I saw that the Palestinian cause was a main reason for all of these, for the inflammation of these ideologies. And my main target is the societal development. So that means in order to fulfill this goal, I have to kill the main tool for inflaming those kind of identities. So how you kill them? By peace and by thinking rationally, instead of just this whole propaganda that they're using in the media and in text to they sound they want to solve this Palestinian conflict, but when you go and analyze deeply, they actually want to fulfill their own political needs. They're just using this Palestinian cause to fulfill their political needs. Okay, so I want to go to the main source of this kind of inflammation and kill it by what? By peace, and showing through the writing that this peace is not a surrender. It's not we are giving up the rights. It's basically how to solve it in a more rational way that benefit the whole region. You tried your way for many decades, and it didn't work out. On the contrary, you lost and lost and lost. And look at the region, how we reached to that point. So, and also when I was doing my last book, Twitter Diplomacy in the Age of Media Polarization, I was like, when I was like working on it, I said, like, I am in a dead end. What I'm gonna be doing? Like, there's no way of solving this except to make the peace. So here, I figured out the only way if we want to prosper and if we want to develop, we have to solve this everlasting conflict in order to go and fulfill development, because you couldn't talk about development in education, development in technology, development in the media sector, development in the health sector, development in security, development in anywhere if there's lack of stability and political conflicts. And since those are using mainly, they go to the main source of conflict, which is number one, that, for example, as Dr. Majid said, how the Iranian regime is using this, how the other political Islamists are using this, like the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamists, how Arab nationalists are using that. So, so in order to overcome all of that, we have to overcome it in a scientific way. Look, don't portray me as a traitor when I'm talking about peace. I'm not here in the favor or serving one part over the other. You are using the Palestinians for your own advantage. I'm here trying to solve everybody. I'm trying to solve the conflict that was a problem for everybody through reason, through studies. So this is the main thing that drive me into all of that. It was even before the whole Abraham Accord thing that happened. The only difference that I'm now more open about it. I was before the Abraham Accord, I was talking about it more subtly because I was quite worried how the backlash will be against me. Beside that, my country hasn't normalized yet. But my main intention is the good for everybody, including my country, including the region, including everybody. So in the beginning, I was writing about it subtly. Now I'm writing about it much more openly. So that's the only difference, Irena. That's what that will take me. I will keep now the chance for Dr. Frank, and I will talk about my previous articles. That I will give just an example. My previous article before the Abraham Accord, and the difference between before the Abraham Accord and now. What's the difference?
Dr. Frank, I'd like to turn to you now. You've been a prolific contributor to the Begin Sadat Center in Israel, and even before the Abraham Accords. And you're in academia professionally, and this is not an easy thing to do for someone who is an academic even in a U.S. institution, given the climate on campuses today, given the proliferation of pro-BDS narratives and extreme leftist thinking and Islamist influences and so forth. What gave you the interest and the courage to do that? What made you decide to contribute to that specific area, and how did you end up moving into the direction of this idea of strengthening Abraham Accords?
Thank you. Well, Irena, first, my background, education background, I have kind of like a mix and a match. I have a master's degree in political science, and I have several other degrees, but one of them is business administration. So to me, like, I look at both things together, and I like to add value to it. The entire subject started for me whenever Mr. Trump proposed the peace to prosperity peace plan. I was one of the first people that analyzed it. So actually, we did a combined work, me and Dr. Edie Cohen from Begin Sadat Center, and we got an approval from the Visa Center to meet with Mr. Jared Kushner and discuss that plan and publish that in 3 languages, in Hebrew language, Arabic language, and in English language, to give people an idea what is this peace. So I went ahead and I analyzed that in points just to show how much it's good. And I was surprised from the denial from the Palestinian side. I went ahead and I compared it to any peace proposal that came out since even Jimmy Carter. And all of them, they were to a certain point good, but the most excellent one with a business approach to it was the peace for prosperity. Now, people actually in Arabic word, we have a problem that if we keep communicating in an English language, they're not going to understand our approaches, because they went ahead and translate that peace to prosperity to the deal of the century, which is not a deal. In Arabic, it's safka. So when you say that word in Arabic land, they will think it's a deal. It's not a peace plan. Okay, an actual peace plan that it was really beneficial for the Palestinian side. So accordingly, after that, I expected that if the Palestinians is not going to accept this, most of the Arabic countries, they're going to fed up with that cause, that it cannot be fulfilled. Even with a plan like this, which is very beneficial for the Palestinian side. Even I know like some of the Israeli people that weren't even line up with that plan. Like they were hesitant to it. So it was actually more beneficial to the Palestinian side than the Israeli side, even though they denied it. So I was expecting that it's going to be something different after that, which is actually the Abraham Accord. The most country that really prepared even infrastructure, even the openness to a peace with Israel is United Arab Emirates. And I was expecting it to be the first one. And all of a sudden it came to existence, and it was a huge achievement from the Gulf area exactly, the first country that far away from Israel. The old peace that happened between the Arabs and Israel, Egypt, Jordan, it was kind of like a a border peace. It had all the components and elements in it, but the leadership decided not to apply it to people or on a people to people level. They just kept it on that, even though the governments of Egypt and Jordan, we wrote an article, me and Dr. Najat, and we analyzed what they benefited out of it. So the two countries benefited big time out of the peace treaty with Israel, but they kept it to themselves and they did not apply it to people. Now, when the United Arab Emirates came up with a deal, and then I was watching the news and keeping up, what's going on after that. I've noticed that Sharaka subject, and it was amazing to me. I like the idea. Even like I talked to Dr. Najat, and I told her I like it. She asked me why you like it. I said this is the first step to a huge step is going to come afterwards. So the guys did excellent, and I really appreciate Dr. Majid, and after I like to call you Majid, okay? uh, is that your name, Majid, right? Okay, so I appreciate the job that they did. I've noticed that you called him Majid, so I think that I'm calling him the right way. Okay, so that's my comment. So they did a great job in starting from the bottom to the top, and instead from the top to the bottom. So they start from people to people, and that created the main keystone for the peace for people to start. But we have to realize that something in the Middle East, the rejection is far way more than the acceptance of these kind of treaties. So we needed to reach those people in a different approach that they are not used to, which is the actual facts and academic approach, so they will understand the benefit of a peace treaty like this.
That's pretty amazing. And actually, your involvement with the initial stages of the original plan, I think that's worth highlighting, because there's been a lot of negative voices trying to claim that all of this was decided just by some clique in the Trump administration, but it sounds like it's been run professionally by people with insights into what actually works, and it wasn't just some haphazard. Unfortunately, there's been some sentiment from some elements claiming to speak on behalf of the Biden administration that claimed that that plan had not been properly run, that it was dead upon arrival, and they didn't explain why. They made it sound that it was dead upon arrival because it was simply not studied well, as opposed to due to the intransigence of the Palestinian leadership. But you're living proof that that's not the case, that it's that the original plan for peaceful prosperity had been vetted, had been studied, had been discussed, and before being put forward. It was not some impulsive venture to just shut down criticism. So that is very much worth underscoring for the skeptics of the past administration's level of engagement into this effort. Now, I kind of want to go back to Dr. Najat for to expand a little bit on what she said about her articles and about this process and what brought her to this initiative. And I kind of want to talk to you both about how you decided that the academic to come up with the idea of this academic venture, specifically this particular direction, and where do you want to see it go? What's the plan? That's not.
Do you mean how did I turn to be what brought me to Sharaka Scholar Forum, or you're talking about my own experience and
both,
that?
Both.
Okay.
Because I think both are tied together ultimately at the end of the day.
Okay. Let me start with I will just give a quick example of my previous articles in this. My idea of this piece was was before like the Abraham Accord that happened, and but I was the only difference between now and before in my writing, that I was writing not in a very open way like now. For example, I'm a regular writer in the Gaystone Institute. One of my articles, which is called Arabian Gulf Citizen and Changing Views, was published in January 2020, which is like almost, you could say, more than 6 months before the actual Abraham that happened. So I was highlighting here how the views of the Arab people have changed than the 50s and the 60s, and mainly the people in the Gulf. Now they are more open for peace, and they're fed up of people taking advantage, opportunists mainly taking advantage of the Palestinian cause for their own advantage. And because some of them are using even the Arab Gulf countries to rip them off in order to fulfill their own political and financial needs. So nobody is really serious, only few of them serious in solving this conflict sincerely. And you can see that this kind of topics are discussed in the social media, even on TV and interviews. So in this article, I mentioned the importance of digital diplomacy to overcome the bias of the traditional media, because the traditional media, both in the Arab media and the Western media, is completely biased and prejudiced. And it seems like as if they don't want this conflict to be solved forever. So through the book that I'm writing, through this article, I highlighted the importance of digital diplomacy and mainly the usage of foreign ministries of social media. Because they can express, they can get closer to the people, they can bring people together. So, and I called those, even Twitter is calling them, like the political leaders and diplomats who are using, for example, Twitter and to promote their peaceful ideas, diplomats. And how this can bring people together, at least to overcome the conflicts in the traditional media. I also highlighted in this article that was back in the early 2020, how social gatherings between, for example, Israelis and Arabs, American Jewish Americans with Arabs in Western countries can also help with that. Only social gatherings that you can open up discussion other than conflicts. So, but I was mentioning these points very subtly, not openly. That was the only difference. After the Abraham Accord, it was like a relief for me. And I was expecting, honestly, the first country that will be doing that is UAE, because the book that I was writing, it's covering UAE and covering how diplomats can combat the bias in the traditional media, bringing the UAE as an example and Saudi Arabia. But I expected the UAE will start with that because they don't have the whole challenges of Saudi Arabia. So when this happened, I said, finally, what I expected that will happen, it happened. So the first article that I wrote after the Abraham Accord was the Sharaka project brings Israeli Arab peace to ordinary people. And here I talked about in this article about the first UAE delegation to Israel. Dr. Majid was involved in this visit. And I highlighted what they have done, and how this is like the first start of people-to-people peace, and which is called warm peace. But the main thing that I highlighted here, that now we are starting a new model. The paradigm is shifting from the old traditional paradigm that says no normalization without solving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, to a new paradigm that basically is saying that we can solve this conflict through normalization. So it is the other way around. We have tried the traditional model for more than 7 decades, and it didn't work out. So when things do not work out for like decades, You have to try another model. You couldn't expect that you're doing the same thing and you expect another result will come. So since this model, the traditional model, didn't work out for more than 7 decades, now it's about time to start a new model to solve it. We couldn't keep this conflict going, and those opportunists are using this kind of conflict. And what is happening? More extremist ideologies, more conflicts, and accordingly, what will happen? More and more lack of development. So the fact that UAE is its model more into development, this is also one of the reasons that made me think very surely that UAE will start it. Because the model of UAE, it is very pragmatic country. It is gearing its country to development. It's even thinking in a forecast way of thinking that it's even not only thinking in the infrastructure development, but also in social development. They are developing their own people and making them ready for coexistence, for tolerance, because they want to push their people to overcome all of these obstacles that the region is suffering from to enlightened vision, and that will benefit everybody. This piece is not on the expense of the Palestinians. On the contrary, I'm helping you. I'm not using you. So this is the new paradigm that we are moving through, and I highlighted all of that through the Sharaka, and how they are starting, like it is truly started that top bottom, but it also strengthened this top bottom through the bottom up. And this visit, the first visit, was the first mark of it. And from that point, especially Rena, after our visit, the last visit that we had in the US delegation that Sharaka made, that also made me emphasize, like, okay, wow, Sharaka did a successful job. They started with an excellent job that they started with the social cultural collaboration between people, because now before we were away for many decades. Now we want to put people together. We want to know the cultures of each other's, the society. We want to bring people together. We did that now for more than a year. Now, how to take the Sharaka from this excellent bringing together people culturally and socially, how we can take it to another version, and which is the academic version. So by conveying the importance of peace, not only through the cultural and social level, but also bringing it to the scientific research. So here, I want to convey the importance of a peace, not only through you just talking about peace and bringing people together, which is so important, but for example, here in the Sharaka Scholar Forum that will start officially. In the beginning of the conference that will start in March. It will be from March, it will be covering from March 28th till 30th, and will cover these topics: geopolitics, political communication, international law and politics, economic and business, technology, military defense and security. So here, through the Sharaka Scholar Forum, will not only be constrained to on the academic level, but that is surrounded by intellectual and academics, but also will transform all the findings of those papers that are going to be covered in the conferences of Sharaka Scholar Forum, to interpret it to the general public through the US delegation. Through the, for example, delegation to the US or delegation to Europe, to the future delegation, because we did a very successful job in our delegation to the US, but in order to make it even more successful, if we use those findings of the papers in the conference and then interpret it in our delegations in other European countries or to the United States, but to interpret it in a very easy language, so the general public will know it. Here, I'm convincing the public not only by opinions, but by actual scientific findings. Like this piece will bring you number one, number two, number three, and geopolitics. It will bring you even benefit to the media. It will bring you benefit to the technology. It will bring you benefit in your military and defense. So here we're not only talking about just opinions and like putting people, the advantage of certain people, and that it will benefit everybody. And I will show you this through points, through scientific studies. So now here you're taking even the region from propaganda and loud voices and just talking loudly to more rational way of thinking. So that's the main idea, how this idea of the Sharaka's Scholar Forum came from.
This is great, and I really, really like the concept. I think this is great. I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into that, but I want to go back to Dr. Musmar and then to Dr. Majid. Dr. Frank, could you tell us a little bit about what you envisioned when you decided to partner in this endeavor? Where, besides this conference, how do you see this forum working? What kind of people do you want to attract? And is it going to be limited specifically to UAE, Bahrain, Israel, and so forth? Or are you looking to bring in Moroccans, Sudanese, and possibly, other countries that are being rumored next in line for normalization?
Well, yeah, after the Abraham Accord with the United Arab Emirates, the very first article that I wrote was this deal open doors. Okay, so nothing is going to be limited. If we're going to limit ourselves, so we're going to go backwards again and again. But this is like a keystone for future. Now, one of the main things that I've noticed in the Arabic world, most of the approaches from the West to the Arabic world, mostly in English, and mostly in an English mentality. Now, you're going to have to consider that those people has different cultures, different way of thinking, different religion. They have a background that it's way different than the American approach. And that's why most of the approaches in the past did not work. Maybe worked to a certain point. There was more of interference than really a cooperation. So we need people to understand the culture. So those people, first of all, when we thought about the Scholar Forum, so we need at least at the beginning some scholars from the Arabic word, so they understand how the Arabic word think. In the meantime, they will be able to transfer the message, academic message, to the Arabic man, to the simple man. So we said the rejection is high. The rejection rate for any peace with Israel is still high. Let's be realistic. I know there is people accept it, but let's be realistic. The rejection percentage is higher than the acceptance percentage in the Arabic world. So what we are trying to do through this project is to show those people that they are rejecting, because of so many factors that, Dr. Najah, Dr. Majid mentioned, that no, it's not the way you think. Let me show you how it's going to look like. So as an example, like I will just give you a small example. I prepared just a few numbers. If we're going to talk just about business and how we could benefit out of this Abraham Accord, just only between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. Israel annual arms sales, it's approximately 6.5 billion. At least 50% on a 50% partnership deal with the United Arab Emirates, that will give a crazy number called $13 billion of investment just in the arms sales. According to the World Bank data, Israel GPD is 401 billion, and it's about 4.5 of its GDP is spent on research and development, which is equal to $18 billion, which means 802 billion valuation at 50% partnership deals in GPD value and $36 billion in R&D. If we combine those numbers with the United Arab Emirates GPD, which is equal to 412, considering that United Arab Emirates will spend 4.5 on R&D as well, and at 50% partnership value between Israel and United Arab Emirates, the valuation of R&D only will be equal to the valuation of $73 billion value. Israel and United Arab Emirates combined GPD will have a valuation of a 1,626 billion dollars, knowing that England entire GPD is 2,707 billions. So just think, that's just between two countries, how much an economy value you could add to the region just out of business partnerships between two countries. So one of the articles that I wrote once before was uh, the not having peace in the Middle East kind of limited the Arab innovations, which is by numbers it is limited. If we're gonna compare the entire GPDs in the Middle East with all the resources that is in there, they lack the innovations. They lost the opportunities to develop their countries just under one reason, that Israel or Jews are the enemies of Arabs and Muslims. And all this is being derived by the Palestinian cause. If the Palestinian cause is not going to be resolved by a crazy plan like peace for prosperity, it's not going to be resolved. So they either move on or the Arab countries will move on. And I think the results, numbers will talk, not me, not my opinion. Numbers will talk.
That is really great news, and I really hope that a lot of people who are already tuning in or who watch this video later will hear just a glimpse of the opportunities that are beneficial to them personally, practically, and actually this will also benefit the Palestinians themselves, who are increasingly engaged with Israel on various economic issues, and that unfortunately doesn't get nearly enough coverage in the media on the international arena, and gives people excuses for not normalizing by claiming that there's no peace process and there's nothing going on when there is in fact a lot going on. So on that note, I want to turn to Dr. Majid again and uh, ask him to expand a little bit on the challenges that Sharaka is facing currently, given what Dr. Najat has mentioned about the media, given the streams of ideology that are still present in the region, and at the same time, at the opportunities. For instance, she also mentioned the recent delegation to the US, which included Sharaka's first official partnership with the American Sephardi Federation, which, by the way, also has its own forum of scholars, of young scholars, young professionals and students, grad students who are contributing in a variety of fields. Some of them are Arabic speaking, and as I've written in the past, Arabic speaking Sephardic Jews could be the keynote connecting Western Middle Eastern countries and Israel, because of their culture and because of their ability to integrate in different regions and their traditional history of also being part of the trade and globalized communications within the various regions from which they hail. So I'd like to hear more, on the one hand, about some of the obstacles and how Sharaka plans on tackling them, and also other potential projects. What are the plans for other potential partnerships, for other forms of engagement? What's next? Who is next? Uh, and and how you how you what how do you see the future vision of Sharaka beyond the role it's already playing?
Well, thank you so much. Now I can tell you the first challenge, the main challenges we face is probably ideologies and narratives. I wouldn't call them obstacles, but they are challenges because you have the vast majority of the people. They do have, as Dr. Frank said, they do have this denial. They do have, um, which is contradicting the human personality. We will definitely talk about the behaviors of the people. You would see people, for example, I'm just going to give an example. Um, let's say a Canadian national, an American national, a British national, but originally coming from a Palestinian origin. Now, with all due respect, I'm not generalizing, but you would see them doing their own best to criticize the peace, to go against the peace. And unfortunately, I mean, you're contradicting yourself. It's not democracy. Never call it democracy, because this is misleading people. I mean, those people, and the majority of those people, believe it or not, they're professionals or scholars who migrated and who live in those countries, and they should be an example. Instead, they give a very negative example and they mislead people with really false information. I think it is a challenge because if you say, like, for example, you live in America, if you see a person who tells you, no, look, and you haven't been in the Middle East, probably, and then you meet this guy who tells you, or this woman who says, yeah, I come from Palestine, but now I moved here, and they would tell you a really false story of what's happening, you would you would believe her or him straight away, right? And maybe you will conduct a conference and make those people speak and say, oh, you know what, it's an apartheid state in Israel, you know, they're killing babies, they're killing women, and so on. But on the other hand, I think raising awareness should be going in parallel with those actions, which is actually what we're doing. It's not easy, I gotta say, but it's not impossible. Probably we cannot do it in a very short time. It will definitely take time. Changing minds is not an easy job. So as I told you, for example, whatever we posted on social media, digital, yeah, as Dr. Najat mentioned, you know, digital diplomacy, where we can see those accounts, you know, from Israel and some accounts from the UAE, posting beautiful visits, conferences, delegations, and so other activities as well. But then you would see these people, because it's so easy, I can easily, whoever it is, you know, I can make a fake account or maybe just open an account and without any information and without any background, I'm just gonna criticize whatever I'm seeing. So education actually is a big challenge too, if we would think about it. Because as I mentioned maybe earlier, I had, if you would call it, an American curriculum education since I was like in early stages of school until I did my higher educations. But then, you know, I did not know much about the Holocaust. I did not know. Now, I mean, you study the World War I, II, and other international events or conflicts, I would call them, but not the Holocaust, for example. And then you don't know what happened. You don't even know that Jews lived in that land, and people would say, no, it's a Muslim country. And I had so many, by the way, unfortunately, even from scholars, like from people who did so many degrees in different aspects, including history. And whenever you speak to them, they're like, no, this is a Muslim land from the ages of David. And I was like, because you believe in David, but David was actually Jewish. He was not, he wasn't calling himself Muslim. Islam was not there yet. So Jacob, David, you know, they're actually Jewish. And if you go through history, the only person who came along after that, and I'm not a religious person, I'm just highlighting some of the historical aspects that people debate you with. So, and then Jesus came, which is, I mean, he held the message of Christianity, and then maybe Islam came. You know, so if you just think about it, it's very simple. You don't have to be a thinker or a researcher or whatsoever. You just have to give it a rational thought, and you will get the result. So again, coming back to the subject, main challenges I would say is denial and not accepting to have a dialogue. But again, we need to be patient. We need to be really systematic with dealing with such behaviors, I would say. And again, one main challenge is the unfortunately toxic leadership. When we say toxic leadership, we're talking about, you mentioned it, whether in Palestine. Now, Hamas is a different story. I don't mean Hamas, because Hamas is we all know it's a terrorist organization. So but whether the leadership or the people who follow them. But I'm talking about the Palestinian leadership, and I'm talking also about other leaderships, like creating those organizations like the BDS, for example, in the US. I don't think they're doing a good job. They're just misleading people. And I saw so many videos, you know, of some BDS leaders coming up making videos, and they're like, no, people do not comment this and that, because they're treating it as a war, and they know they're lying. And unfortunately, when you see those videos, you'll definitely know that you're following the wrong people. But again, I mean, they do have a long history in the US, but awareness is highly needed. And I'm not talking about debates here, because the concept of debates nowadays is really different than what it used to be. And it's based on ethical approach, which is really absent nowadays when it comes to debating with people from BDS and so on. Like, the first thing they would do, they will, with all due respect again, give you those like bad words and unethical attacks and so on, whether in social media or face to face. So again, leadership should be, and I believe Palestine nowadays, they need real leadership. It's a great challenge because people follow what they're saying. Also, we have seen the tragic events that happened back in May between Hamas and Israel. And unfortunately, I've seen lots of educated people supporting Hamas because they were like, oh, these are the owners of the land. It's just a resistance. They're defending themselves. But, and I saw lots and lots of, it was chaotic, I have to say. We tried our best to show the reality of what we saw in Israel. But again, people forgot that, okay, Hamas is firing or launching missiles on innocent people with absolutely no reason. And right away, we saw the leadership of Hamas, collecting donations and getting funded because of the misusage, as Dr. Najat said, of this Palestinian cause. So again, I believe behaviors are the main challenges, toxic leadership, which is in the future. And again, social media as well, I have to say, unless you're really systematic, but we're definitely working on it, on how to be really responsive and so positive and systematic on social media. I believe I would categorize these challenges under these three categories. The rest, of course, it's we have to bear in mind that this is not a very short-term project. We're talking about a very long-term project. Sharaka is not here just for one person or another. We're building something sustainable. I'm pretty sure there would be another generation who would come and continue to carry on Sharaka's objectives and strategies. And hopefully, in the future, everything is going to be much, much better than the past. More peace. And again, convincing people, it's not an easy job, but look, if we consider like the behaviors to be the big umbrella of it, it's rational. But again, we're working so hard 24/7. Again, maybe the latest project is our colleagues here working on the scholars forum, because we all know that research is the gate to so many things. Whenever you come up with paper research, it will definitely be reflected on the educational system or reflected on the government work, or given decision makers an overview of so many aspects and situations, and driving and shaping these policies to be very positive towards peace.
So I wanted to kind of follow up on what you just said, because yes, it's, BDS is a problem, toxic, Palestinian leadership is a problem, toxic groups that are pro-BDS are certainly a problem. There is also the concept of disinformation. During the war with Hamas, the Israeli side, pro-Israel side, versus the anti-Israel side. I don't want to call it pro-Palestinian because there's nothing pro anything about spreading hatred. It's anti, it's
Yes.
pure hatred. It's not pro-Palestinian. And I don't even want to call it that. But the pro-Israel side has not been able to reach the Arab audiences at the same speed that the other side, the pro-Hamas side, has been. And that's even with all the, volunteers and activists who were actively engaged, but I saw it with my own eyes. They simply were not able to keep up with the flow of disinformation, of facts that the first movers advantage was definitely on the side of disinformation. How can Sharaka help overcome that problem in terms of engagement with professionals, with scholars? How can, because I am seeing a huge disconnect between what UAE and other, Bahrain and other countries in the region are doing, the Abraham Accords countries are doing, and the kind of forces of hatred, I'd like to say. The other issue is there's also a systematic media operations that goes far beyond Palestinian activism in Western countries or some academics. It's a systematized media effort aimed at spreading disinformation in Arabic to all these people. It's a massive state-funded effort. They have state backing, and they have backing of major Islamist institutions, movements, and so forth. That's a huge problem in, Sharaka can reach a certain number of people through active efforts, but those people are going to be professionals. They're going to be people who read academic work, even if they're relative, translated to the Arabic mentality, but still, who reads these days, who reads academic work versus the mass popular appeal of these, causes. The fact that the entire mentality is aimed at emotional appeal as opposed to rational thought. How to overcome that disadvantage? What can be done?
I believe, Arena, I think it's really important what you have tackled. Now, the Scholars Forum will definitely focus on academia and focus on research and focus on professionalism. On the other hand, Sharaka started already with just people, delegations. It doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you support peace. And you cannot, I have to highlight this point, you cannot be, if you say I'm pro-Israel, it does not mean I'm against Palestine. And it should be the same way. It should be pro-peace. This is what we have to call it. Because people from both sides are suffering. And I have to say, now, unfortunately, again, I gotta highlight awareness, because if we noticed, the fugitives a few, probably 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, when they have escaped from prison, I've seen lots of comments and they're like, oh my God, poor people, they're mistreated and so on. And then we came up, we did a very public session explaining to the people. And we had like really large number of attendance, explaining to people that with all due respect, these fugitives are terrorists. They are Hamas members. And you know what they did? They're not just prisoners. One of them tried to kill innocent people. The other person planted an explosive in this place. So again, it comes under the awareness of the people. Now, I have to say one important point, which is media, and media. It's really very important. And when I say media, it's media, the regular media, the TV that we watch, including social media as well. And then news, websites, and you can name it. It's endless. Media is really very important, because nowadays I could have a conversation with you and you could say, yes, maybe I would agree with you, maybe not. You know what I mean? But then you go home, you watch the news, and you see the one-sided media. I have seen it myself. Now, I'm not an expert in media. I got to highlight that. But it's really very normal. We have seen media covering the Abraham Accords, covering, I don't want to mention from which country, but it's a Gulf country. Out of a sudden in May, they would just highlight on the, Israeli suppressing innocent Palestinians, without mentioning that these people come from Hamas, without mentioning they're launching the missiles in a civil location which damages civilians in Gaza. So unfortunately, I was so disappointed with this media platform. I mean, again, I don't want to mention from which country or where,
I think we
which
all.
shows
I
yes.
have my guesses. It might.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
struggle a little bit, but
But it shows you the failure in your policy, because one time you're talking positively about the accords, and on the other hand you're just attacking Israel indirectly, and you're just giving it to the people. Because what you do is behavior is so important. What I do is I'd be like, oh my God, look at this. Israelis, capturing innocent people with no reason. You have the right to comment. And then people would definitely be very emotional. In the Arab world, I know, I mean, it could be the same in different places in the world, but Arabs are very, very emotional. When it comes to whatever they see, without thinking, they would be, oh, you know what? And I've seen lots of people wearing the what do you call it? The scarf. There is a name for it. The like the Palestinian scarf.
fear.
Kofia, something like that. Kofia, right? So they would be wearing the kofia at Palestine, and I'm like, guys, Palestine, yes, but also Israel. I mean, the only difference, and I have to say, the only difference is Israelis have much better infrastructure. So whenever something like this happens, they would go in probably bunkers or basements, which is well prepared to protect the people. On the other hand, the people who suffer in Palestine, they don't have it, and they're being really abused by the terrorists of Hamas, or maybe the leadership in Palestine, forcing them to obey. Otherwise, they would be killed, or maybe God knows what's going to happen. So again, people become so emotional. They think, oh my God, they're and I gotta say, Israelis, they do. I have to tackle this point. They do have Arab Israelis that try their best, which is not enough. And I think here it's really important to unify efforts between so many organizations, between so many activists, just to highlight at least the Arab world. Because believe me, nobody knows the truth, thanks to the misleading media, who actually shows the false image. When soldiers protect people, they would never, ever, ever, which is, I think, again, I'm not a journalist, I know nothing about it, but I have to say, you have to be non-biased. You have to show both sides, good side here and good side here, so that people and the person who watches your program, news, show, whatever it is, can tell, the reality, and not to be really on one side. God knows why, but for me, as a guy who is an expert in public policy, it shows that this is a huge failure in public policy, and unfortunately, it affects the people, and it makes people very emotional. And again, they tried to attack the Abraham Accords, as I recall it, back in May. Now the Abraham Accords are really very higher and stronger than just a conflict. And we all seen, everybody was waiting for the statements from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the UAE, statements from different countries. No, the majority, at least, the majority of the countries in the Arab world, they were not favoring one side on the other. Everybody, asked to stop whatever was happening by Hamas. But again, I would like to cut it short. Media is the key, whether it's social media or just traditional media.
So with that, I'd like to pose a question to the entire panel, like and be more of a kind of roundtable thing. What about the concept of pan-Abrahamic Accords media? Because we have seen exciting partnerships in a variety of fields, educational, bilateral partnerships between various institutions, travel, agencies forming, all sorts of cultural efforts. But the one area which is paramount to stopping this spread of disinformation is strong media. And I've spoken to Dr. Nashad about this before. Individually, some of the countries, especially, Abraham Accords countries are not equipped to handle it. Israelis have tried on their own before Abraham Accords. They have not been particularly great at outreach. Their PR has been subpar, especially, and they're not fun, and it's not the government has funded certain initiatives, but it doesn't fund the media. The government funds initiatives, but not the media. And even those initiatives, governments, are governments. I give them credit for trying, but in the Arab states, they cannot. Part of the Alula government prevents the media in UAE and Bahrain from even mentioning the name of the culprits here. So individually, it's just, Morocco is doing great, but it's a francophone country. So reaching the English-speaking world is also not going to be easy. Sudan is tackling great numbers of problems and was facing, in fact, a coup just recently by some of the same types of individuals. So we are facing a problem where separately these countries simply cannot cope with the flow of disinformation at the rate that it's necessary to really break through this propaganda and through disinformation and through incitement that creates a playing field for physical attacks in various parts of the world, including Israel. This disinformation prepared ground for the physical combat confrontation between Hamas and Israel. It started with the disinformation campaign. It started with the word, and then came the action. So the question is, can private institutions in these countries jointly form an organized front, first to share best practices, second to understand each other better and to not speak in crosshairs, as we have seen sometimes happen. We've seen individually there's still a problem with sometimes not getting accurate information. Israeli media, English. First of all, there's not a lot of the Arab voices in the Hebrew language, so it means that only a small portion of Israel is reached from UAE, Bahrain, etc. Most of them do not get translated to Hebrew, which is where most of the audience lies. On the other, on the other hand, you have the issue that some English language institutions in Israel have unfortunately been picking up some of the disinformation from other parts of the Arab world. So we have that problem. What can be done to overcome it? What efforts can be established to work jointly to, first of all, cooperate more effectively in exchanging accurate information about each other and bringing all these countries closer together despite very different cultural backgrounds, and second, to combat disinformation from other efforts and from other countries at the very least, to create something that can be more effective.
Right.
Do you want me to go over this, or Dr. Frank wants to start?
Right.
Yep, or Dr. Frank, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead, Nika, go ahead.
Well, Irina, let us go to the the main problem. The main problem, of this, the other part, the challenging, the other part that is opposing the peace, they're successful for two things. First of all, why they are successful, why their mission is easier than us who are pro-peace and pro-stability. Because the widespread of the whole region is ideologue driven. And mainly those ideologies are driven of those identities that I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, which is political Islamism and Arab nationalism. So they're using all of these two that are like so emotional to the Arab region in order to inflame them for their own political needs. It shows that they are like concerned about the Palestinian cause, but actually they have their own political needs. But it can tickle the Arab people so much because, as Dr. Majid said, the majority of the Arab people are emotional. And how you can tickle the emotion of the people by two things: Arab nationalism and Islamism. And on the other hand, those who are pro-peace are like addressing the nation of the Arab world, the whole people of the Arab world, in a language that they're not used to, which is the language of reason, the language of science, the language of development. They're used to the language of propaganda, and the media of those people who are against, or those countries, or those or those regimes, you call them, who are against this any kind of peace and stability, they are like using those identities in order to fulfill their needs. So it's easy for them to tackle the majority of the Arab people, because they're looked at as, yes, they are like the heroes. We are like fighting and beating imperialism, colonialism, while the others are puppet of the United States and the big powers. So this is what is the general, idea of the majority of the people. And now we are like not only building a media, we're building an actual new model. And first of all, establish this model. And based on this model, you're going to be building the media. You couldn't build the media without having a certain model. If you're just opening a satellite television and nice studios and beautiful presenters and handsome anchors, this is not the way that you tackle the people. You must have the mindset, how to target the mindset. So that's why I kept writing and mentioning that we have to have a media academy. And based on this media academy, you're going to build a successful media. Because in this academy, you have to study the how to change the mindset of the people, how to change them from emotion to reason, from propaganda to a true media. And accordingly, this kind of Sharaka Scholar Forum can be the first step of it, because the ultimate end of this whole forum is to build a think tank. And this is the main success of building a successful media, to build a think tank. How we can reach the mindset of the people, and through education, through the public community, and how to build a successful media to target this. So we need an audience research to do that. How we can reach to the people and to reach them psychologically, mentally, and to promote these kind of new ideas. It is not new, but new to the Arab world, because the Arab world is, since the beginning of the Sawt al-Arab, the voice of Arab of Abd al-Nasser, until now, they're used to propaganda. Now we want to change. Do you think this is easy? Of course it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It will take us a long time. But in order to fulfill this goal, we have to start right. To start right, we have to build the model, and through a research way, through academic way, and how to interpret this academic way in an easy language, and to understand the mentality of the people. Then comes to your question. Individual satellite television or individual media, I'm telling you from now, it will never be successful. It has to be collaborative. All those countries and all those kind of intellectuals have to collaborate in order to make this successful. Like those who are anti-peace, you see them, they're working hand in hand. Mm-hmm. But the other ones are working scattered. How we can bring those together? That's why when I was working on my book, and that's why it is delayed for publication, because I added a chapter on Abraham Accord, and mainly on the media alliance among Abraham Accord countries. We couldn't make it, like Israel by itself couldn't reach to the people of the region. UAE by itself couldn't reach. Jordan, Egypt, Bahrain, individually, we will never reach. It has to be collaborative. So here, this is the first step of something collaborative like this, through this kind of Sharaka Scholar. This is just a very beginning. It will take time, and we need a lot of conferences, we need a lot of delegations, and we need an academy. And through this, you build a successful media. And media is now, we are living in the convergence age, which is like the traditional media is complementing the new media, and the new media is complementing the traditional media. Nothing will wipe out the other. So here, for example, you will go through a certain process through using digital diplomacy, citizen diplomacy. So here we want to use those younger and to train those younger generation how to be a citizen diplomat. You promote this idea of peace through using the social media, and then you bring whatever is in the social media in the traditional media. So here we can analyze what our people are writing in the social media, and to think how we can build a strong content in the traditional media. Because without a good content, the traditional media is dead. It's not the traditional media like TV, radio, the press. They keep saying that they are dying because of the booming of the social media and new media. No, in my opinion, and through what I'm reading and analyzing, the death of the traditional media because of the lack of good content. They're using the same old-fashioned, and they are expecting that people will be attracted. Now, attracting the generation of this generation is different than attracting them in the 80s or the 90s. Now, the challenge is more. If you don't want to be compatible with what is going now, okay, you will never be successful. And just to remember, the other part, the antis, the haters are working so hard. They're working so hard in the social media. They're working so hard in the traditional media. Even though the content we know is dangerous, but honestly, if you want to think about it from a technical part, they're doing it right. They're doing it better than the others who have the good intention. The others are working individually. They're not having an academy compared to the others. And beside this, their challenges are even more than the other part. The other part do not have the challenges as the peacemakers. The peacemakers are citing a new model. The others are using the same kind of inflammation that is happening ages ago. Now we want to change the mindset, to change the people mindset. It takes a lot of time. Without like having this kind of strategy, it will never work as haphazard. The other thing, we are targeting two types of people. We have two people. Those are like the hidden ones. The hidden one are those people who want peace, but they are afraid to talk about it because the majority are against it. So now through like scientific findings, look, I am here not a traitor. I'm not here serving the other part or your enemy. I'm here doing it for the good, and based on these numbers, based on those scientific studies. So when you say I am pro-peace, I'm not a traitor here. I'm doing it for the good of you, for the good of the Palestinians, for the good of the Arab countries, and for the whole region. So I'm not doing it because I'm like pro-imperialism or pro-colonialism, as they're saying. Look, you are following the others. How the others helped you throughout the 17 years. Let us try another thing based on those findings that you see. The other kind of people that we want to combat, we couldn't convince them, the brainwashed people by all of these ideologies. Those people are spreading hateful rhetoric. In order to combat this rhetoric, you couldn't just say simply, we are pro-peace, peace is good. You have to combat them with actual findings. And how to combat them, we couldn't just say it, we have to do it. Like based on this paper, this findings we came to, based on those studies. I'm showing you numbers, I'm showing you studies. What are you showing me? Conspiracies? Propaganda? Is that how you want to convince the new generation? I'm showing you numbers. I'm showing you how this peace process can improve your economy, can improve your technology, can improve your stability, can improve your security. And you're talking propaganda? This is how, but that needs a lot of work. So all what I'm saying here, the peacemakers, their homework is much harder than the haters. The haters, the soil of their soil is already existing. I'm trying to create a new soil, because media is not only to create a satellite or to write a tweet or to post something. It's more than that. I'm trying to create the soil that doesn't exist. I'm just putting the essence of it. The essence of the others have been established ages ago, but I'm still building. I'm building a new thing. So that's why our challenges are much more than the others. So we have many challenges to overcome. Is it possible? Yes. Is it easy? No. We have to work so hard from every aspect, from a top bottom and bottom up. So that's my final talk about it. And this.
That's a great response. And Dr. Musma, what do you think about this?
Well, okay. Najat said it all. Okay. Well, the other side, if they use emotion, we're going to use fact. Let's do it like that. Okay. So I think even a lot of people start in the Middle East, they start feeling that the emotion is not taking it nowhere. And there is nothing to look for in case they want to switch their emotions to the different direction. So we are the keystone. Sharaka is going to be the keystone, and we're going to build this brick over brick to be able to show people that it's not done by emotions, and your emotions did not take you nowhere. This information is going to be all the time there, and what Dr. Najat said, it's very organized. Yes, but it's not based on scientific fact. So if we come up to an equal way of showing people a more organized way of facts, I think we're going to gain more ground than that. It's going to take time. It's a process, and that's why
Oh,
we're here, just to highlight this first break. Go ahead.
I agree completely. I do think that the other side doesn't have anything to offer except wars and incitement and violence and hatred and destruction. And we've seen the results of this propaganda all over the region, not just with the Israel and Hamas or the Palestinian Authority, but we've seen that in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, we've seen it in Lebanon, we're seeing it, all over North Africa. We've seen it during the Arab Spring. Nothing, it has not resulted in anything positive or constructive. But what has the other side? They have resources. They have infinite amount of resources to spend on buying up existing outlets, creating bots, dedicating people who, activists to spread this disinformation on social media. They have the resources, they have the control of institutions, they have the first movers advantage, they're willing to spend money, and they don't care whether the person is great, they don't spend 10 years to win somebody's trust. They go, they buy an outfit, they buy up a writer, and they create a monopoly on the means of spreading information. So yes, the approach of spreading facts is slow but steady and important. But what do you do when the other side has the control of the narrative already? How do you break through the noise, even if you think that people are tired of it and skeptical? How do you actually gain the entry to show your side?
Well, Irena, okay, I agree and disagree to a certain point.
Mhm.
Now, I know they have the resources and they've been utilizing those resources for a long time. I understand that fact. But because there is no alternatives, okay? For any education, any educational process to succeed, you need a good teacher, you need a good material, and you need a student that is willing to learn. Okay, so let's say we are the teachers, we are creating the materials now. Okay, the idea of the scholar forum is to create the media, to create the meat, so we could say, here you go, this is what we have, and then those students, hopefully they will be willing to learn, because now they have alternatives. Now they don't have it, so I don't blame him. Sometimes I feel sorry for him, but that's what they have. What Dr. Najat said, that the other part, which is us, we are not organized, and now we are trying to be organized, scattered. Some, it depends maybe on people where they live, maybe on the reactions of people in his society and his surrounding. But if we start something, everything in this life need to start in a way or another. So that's how we are doing it now. Hopefully, we are the start, and maybe a lot of stuff is going to come afterwards. I'm not going to say it's going to be us all the time. Hopefully, people will just become everywhere in different countries, not just in the Middle East. But the idea is we are the teachers that creating the materials to teach people. Does that give a sense?
Absolutely. I like your point. Basically, we start and then it spreads because each person can recruit new people and can deliver the message by their own means, and you don't have to depend on somebody else to do it. You create the people with the initiative who can catalyze these movements. So on the one hand, it's fact-based, but on the other hand, it's still human outreach. And Dr. Majid, what are your thoughts about this? Like to come back to you for the kind of to wrap up this discussion.
Definitely. Well, I agree with my colleagues here, definitely, on so many aspects. And we have tackled lots of other aspects, resources, people, being systematic, and so on, and media, which is again very important. But again, I have to also maybe highlight that I saw from my personal experience that it's really very effective when the side from Israel tackles Arabic,
Mhm.
Arabic language. And of course, we've had so many meetings, and I know the people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or maybe different, let's say, government, I have to say, entities in Israel that, handle the social media accounts and so on. Um, Now, first of all, you have to deliver a very clear message, which is Arabic. I have to say, for now, is really more important than English. English is important, but at least when it comes from Israel, Israel is in the Middle East. It's surrounded by all Arabic-speaking countries. So again, delivering your message in Arabic, very clear message in Arabic, is really very important. And I'm not talking, by the way, I'm not talking about hard times, like for example, what happened in Gaza and so on. I told, excuse me, I'm talking about a systematic message delivering, like even now, tomorrow, after tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, it has to be in Arabic. It has to be simplified. Now, for example, the most successful and known Arabic person from Israel is the IDF spokesman, and nobody is going to I know him personally, but no one is going to accept his messages because they know he's a soldier, they know he's an IDF, they know his government. So basically you need more people delivering, and I believe the people from the MFA there is doing a great job, but it's not enough. It has to be expanded. You have to expand. You have to reach out to more people. You have to have your own studies on how to segment people. It's really very important. Who are your audience, and are they all again, as we have mentioned maybe in the beginning, are they all just people? And I'm not underestimating people, but are they educated people, not educated? Where do they come from? The Arab world is not the same, all of it. You have the Levant, which is really different than the Gulf, which is different than North Africa, and even the Gulf, by the way. You would have these slight differences between one country to another, and as a person or as an entity or organization, you have to understand these audiences. So, and again, I think, look, uniting or unifying the efforts is really very important. And as maybe Dr. Najat mentioned, uh, they work together. Whatever happens, even they do have their own differences or disagreements, but when it comes to this cause, okay, they would be together. So, and unfortunately, you would hear here so many scattered voices, as Dr. Najat said, and I have to say, it's really significant. It is the key on how to bring it on all together. So I hope it answers that.
Thank you so much. That was great, and I agree with you. I think a lot in terms of this linguistic exchange to make sure that things are not simply lost in translation. That there is a direct line of communication. That a lot of effort needs to be put into it. There is some resistance, but at the same time, there are increasing numbers of students in Israel studying, Arabic, hopefully with the exchanges with the UAE, Morocco, Bahrain, other countries, you have
Yeah.
increasing numbers actually understanding the mentality from working, living there, and studying there. So I hope this is something that can be also facilitated, and also with the Egypt and Jordan, there's already a great body for educational opportunities as well. So I hope these things will increase with time for sure. And I think the idea of creating something to unify both the media, speaking to a more popular piece, and academic ventures to study how it's done and create strategies, both of these efforts are important because I don't think most people will be reading academic writing other than professionals in the field, but it's important for creating strategy to inform best practices for media efforts for private for various initiatives of that sort. But it's also important to create something that will speak to regular people in relatively accessible language. So that is something I hope will happen as well, alongside with the academic project. I think the academic project is exciting. I look forward to it. I look forward to reading the submissions from various people once it launches, and excited to see the faces, to see people being involved and creating sub projects from that, and building a real foundation here. And I'd like to just thank everyone here for contributing to this important effort, for contributing to something constructive, positive, not just complaining for years, as I've been hearing and engaging myself. And finally, you guys are doing something to really address this issue. So big kudos to all of you. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you back here as these projects progress, as other partnerships proliferate, hopefully, and take on, and we see new factors entering the equation and new initiatives with other Abraham Accords countries happen. I'd like to see a lot more and to hear a lot more and to engage more the audience more with your efforts. It's important for it to be visible, to be heard, and to be constantly in the news. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.